Hello everyone, James Donaldson here with the Contemporary Gentleman, and I'm bringing you a video on the Sig MCX Gen 3, also known as the Spear LT. I don't know why they don't just call it MCX, but whatever. Sig doing Sig things, as they like to do. Now, the gun and all the components used in conjunction with it were acquired by a third party, so keep that in mind. It's our full disclosure, and let's get into it. Alright, so getting right into the meat and potatoes. Wow, this is a funny order. I made these notes days ago and now revisiting them. The trigger's great. I think it's great. I'm not a trigger snob. Some guys are, some guys aren't. I think the trigger is great. It's just nice. It feels very much like a Geisley. Now that I think about it, I've been shooting a different gun with a different guy with a Geisley in it, and that one is a little more crisp, but really, again, I'm not one to complain about this kind of thing, so I have no problem with it. Yeah, maybe a little heavier than the Geisley, but either way. Now, important thing about the MCX Gen 3 Spear LT is the trigger is completely compatible and swappable with any AR-15 trigger. So, if you don't like it, that's your prerogative if you want to switch it out or not. Moving on to the Ambi controls before I set that down, I like them a lot. Now, I have a Daniel Defense M4A1 that will be next, spoiler alert, and they both have Ambi controls right up here. This one is a little bit better, I will say, but really on both of them, all I'm trying to use is the bolt hold open. So, push my finger up, and now, there we go. The release, this one's release, from the release aspect, is easier, but, I mean, the Daniel Defense, I have to really reach up there. But again, at the end of the day, that's not really, I'm using my thumb to release it for the most part. Now, if I had to use this finger, the MCX is going to be the better controls. I haven't used an array of other Ambi controls from other suppliers, so I can't tell you about anyone else, but at least compared to the Daniel Defense, this one is slightly better. Next. So moving on, in kind of comparison to the other generations, I really like things that were continued from the other generations. So like no buffer tube, a rail that comes off pretty easily, and a rail on that's still part of the upper that extends past the upper. So really, oh gosh, I can't even find it. There it is. So the rail on the upper actually extends to there, which, if you like mounting lambs back, which I kind of do, that's really great for that, especially where these rails are kind of notorious for not holding zero that well. So it's just gonna kind of improve that. Just a nice feature to have. Moving on from there, it just is so compatible with the AR-15 world of accessories. I don't know if I mentioned that enough in the MCX videos that I've done prior, but so a lot of other 5.56 semi-auto rifles, you're going to have to use magazines that are for that gun. Or there's not really any kind of pick rail system unless you buy something aftermarket. So it's one of the AR-15, one of the reasons the AR-15 platform has been so prolific is the ease of nature of switching and compatibility. I think the MCX variants really hit that pretty good. They do a pretty good job of fitting right in where I didn't have to go buy a bunch of new mags. I didn't have to go buy stuff that would mount differently, other than the fact that some of this is in Mach and Picatinny, whereas before all I had was quad rail. So really overall, they really will easily kind of slide right into, if you already have a bunch of ARs or you have one AR and you're swapping it out and upgrading, I don't know if I'd use that word, switching to an MCX, it'll be a pretty easy transition overall. And so that's something that I really wanted to make a note about, and especially this one more so because of the trigger ordeal. So, next. Foldability. I had a Mark 18, and I switched to the MCX Virtus, and then to this, and really a lot of it came down to I wanted to easily be able to stow my Mark 18 when I went to the range in the morning before work, so I didn't leave it in the car and I could just bring it into work. Luckily we're pretty Pro 2A and I can actually just leave guns strewn about my office without any question, but even just going in and out of the building. So being able to fold it and just make it more, now this, I need a strap wrench to get this off, so we'll just pretend that the Huxworks isn't on there. But it gets pretty compact. It would be very easy to find a bag you could have that looks pretty inconspicuous and fit this in if you want to hit the range in the morning or after work. Now, at the end of the day, for me, a 5.56 rifle, especially if you just have one, is to be a fighting rifle. And so even though I did take this range in the morning and stuff, I just, because I would do up my sling around it and everything, and I hardly used the foldability. Especially in the gun safe, it put it at a weird spot for it fit to Tetris in with the other guns. I actually had this extended vast majority of the time, and there wasn't a whole lot of reason to even do it when I went to the range. I kind of did it because I could, but again, sometimes I didn't because I already had the sling all tucked. So while it was a feature I originally kind of caught my eye and made me aware of the MCX platform, it ended up being a feature I really don't use very often, and I definitely don't need. And if I did need it, there is that law folder, which I don't have first-hand experience with, but it's been around the market for so long, so many people have tested, especially people that I trust, that I'm at the point where, okay, that's a viable option if I want to go that route. Now, getting to the rail, again, interestingly enough, I value the ability to take off the rail and swap barrels and things kind of more when I was getting familiar with the setup, and ATF was being weird with SBR stuff, so I had to, throw on a 16-inch barrel to make sure my gun complied and all that kind of garbage. So it's a very modular platform, and so it had some suitability, especially where it's very easy to go from a brace to a stock when I put a 16-inch on. And then I got, of course, one of my MCX lowers is an SBR, so I can put whatever on it. So to go from a brace to make it a pistol to an SBR, it was just simply loosening one little screw in the back. And so continue on with that with the rail and the barrel. This, I already got really familiar with the MCX platform. You can go back and look at a lot of my videos. So when I acquired the Spear LT, I got it in the configuration I wanted it. And it's been great. And so I really, believe it or not, I really haven't taken it apart much. These screws kind of make me do it less just because it slides right out on the Virtus. They felt it was necessary. Apparently it still didn't hold zeros well. I didn't really have any IR problems, but I don't shoot that far away. I don't shoot that often, so I don't know. But yeah, the rail just not that useful for the 5.56. Now with the folding and the rail, my 300 Blackout, it goes into a backpack. That's where it lives. It gets carried around that way. I do have two different rails I like depending on what I'm doing. One of them is, of course, the SD handguard that covers the can almost all the way. The other one is shorter, just goes along the barrel, so just etc. etc. The modularity, the versatility is nice, but in this configuration, it just wasn't as useful to me, and that includes moving rails around. So yeah. And getting into caveats and variables. I know we're there already. So, first of all, wait. And I always feel silly bringing it up, especially as much as I do. But the older I get, the more experienced I get, the more wise I get. Not saying I'm wise, but I'm getting wiser. Weight really does play a factor. And it's kind of like, I really liken it to saving money and figuring out where you're going to spend your money. You're on a budget. So you get single tube, high quality night vision, and you just passive aim and skip the laser. That's a way to budget yourself into night vision versus getting Gen 2 green phosphor, thin film dual tubes, and, an APLC. Like, don't do that. So, anyway, getting back to it, saving your money, you have a max capacity you can take. And however much of that capacity you use, you are using more energy than if you use less weight. So where all guys are always like, go to the gym, blah, blah. I work out. I would say I'm in probably slightly better than decent shape. And it fluctuates. So some months I am probably in really good shape. Just depending on my life, priorities at the time, whatever. And so my point is that, and there's dudes that of course way more fit than me. Weight is always going to matter though. So if you are the strongest man alive, you don't necessarily need to carry all the heavy stuff because you can. You can always be saving that energy, saving all that capability for if you need it. Well, what if you have to go miles more than you already went, right? You never know what the future is going to have in store for you. That's the whole point of being ready. So saving weight is really great. Now, I always preach there's no free lunch. There's always a give and take. So as we kind of go through these caveats and variables, we're going to say, okay, this is heavier. What am I getting in return for the weight? Obviously, it's a piston system. We know that much, so that's why the weight is there. The other thing is, weight back here would balance it out, but there's not much weight back here. The recoil system that would be here is here. It's probably even heavier than it would be otherwise if it was an actual buffer assembly. Then we've added weight up here. So not only have we added a bunch of weight, but we've put the weight in kind of inconvenient places. So I have more to hold up here, which I'm going to have a laser on. I'm going to have a light and all the other shit. So, again, we've kind of done a lot of negative stuff, but let's talk about some of the positives that we got back. And then in the end, we're going to see if they were worth it. So, I will say, with that weight, I just had this on an evasion exercise. I was doing some training, and it was basically a survival, it was a SEER training. And I had an objective location. I had to move several hundred yards to another location, and I had to get past 5 people, one of whom wasn't really engaged because they were engaging me with a drone, so the drone was there serving as them as a surrogate. But anyway, still formidable task. And I had wetland to go through, heavy, dense forest. Anyway, so I got to really drag this bitch around the woods. And of course I had it on me the rest of the day as well. And there were times I didn't have it on me because I took it off. But I probably would have done that with any rifle, so I digress. But basically, this was noticeably heavy. Now, did I do all that and was I successful? Yes, but when you're pushing yourself like that, if you have something that's heavier than it needs to be, and there's not really good reason for it, you're just cutting into your energy levels. And that's definitely what I did. I mean, I didn't push myself to the point where I couldn't hold it up. For instance, at one point I was using my magnifier, my aim point a lot, to look down a trail I was moving down. I'm sure someone in the comments will be like, you never moved down a trail. Well, you weren't there, you didn't know what was going on. Plus, it actually turned out really good, and I evaded all 5 people and got to my objective without them catching me, to include the drone, and it was because I went down the trail. Part of that was they didn't think I'd be dumb enough to go down the trail, or bold enough, ballsy enough, whatever, to go down the trail. So, anyway, funny story for another time. But, so, yeah, there's some weight here. Now, there's enough weight. I do not recommend any of these MCXs in 16-inch. Absolutely not. It is more manageable in the compact setting, right? But again, let's get into what you're getting for that weight. So first and foremost, the gas system is way better than the Virtus right there, and it is lighter than the Virtus. That said, this gun is about half a pound heavier than the Daniel Defense M4A1 Ris 3, and it's pretty much a full pound heavier than the DDM4 Ris 3S, which is the 11.5 for the new Ris 3 platform. Full pound. So, but is its gas system better? No. That was one of the things that took me to the MCX platform. Is I kept hearing, oh, piston systems do better with suppressors. Well, no, they don't. Bullshit. Some might. And I was corrected in another video. I said piston systems don't do better. I shouldn't have been that broad. But I will tell you that in my experience and talking to some other people, Alabama Arsenal, for instance, a lot of them don't do better. Some might, sure, but they don't. So with this gas system, it was an improvement on the Virtus. The Virtus was so bad with the Gemtech 1 on it, I couldn't finish zeroing an 11.5 rifle in 5.56. And no, by the way, I can't say this enough because too many people say it wrong. The 300 Blackout doesn't have a suppressed and unsuppressed setting. It is a subsonic or supersonic setting. Subsonics do not have enough oomph to cycle the weapon, suppressed or not. So it is a subsonic setting. The other setting is for supers. For 5.56, you have a regular and adverse setting. If things get into the gun, whatever atmospherically is going on, and the gun's not cycling properly, you can kick it up a notch as far as the gas flow and get more power behind stroking that piston. I don't know why that sounds dirty. But anyway, so stop thinking that, no, no. So I heard that the Spear LT was way better than the Virtus, and that's what finally sold me on trying this out. And it is way better, no doubt. That said, running a Surefire RC2 on it for a while, and it still had some gas to the face. And so putting this Flow 556K on it, it's been fantastic. I've actually liked that configuration quite a lot. Now, I haven't used it much at night, so my study of the 556K will be ongoing, as well of the RC2. But, so really at the end of the day, if you're running one of these, you really can't mess with adjusting it for a suppressor. Now, there's a caveat to that by J. Bennett Designs. They have a gas insert valve, basically, or it's part of the valve technically, and it's the key where you adjust, and it gives you more adjustments. But it also has a port in the center where you can put in different set screws, many of which have an opening in the middle of them, which ejects gas forward. I can't wait to dig into this more and do a video on it, because to me it is the perfect design. When I experienced all the issues with the Virtus, and then even some with this, I really thought, well, that gas key, the gas is all going to the same place. You're just kind of changing the process of getting it there. It doesn't really solve the problem, especially of getting gas back in the face. So I think this will do it. But as of right now, it's really the only option you have, besides what some people have done with Virtuses, and probably Spears at this point, is they switch out their little gas keys between their 300 blackouts and their 300 blackout 9-inch and 16-inch and 556 16-inch, and because they all have slightly different orifices. Probably in many cases you can't even tell by looking at them. You just have to know which model you have. And Sig wouldn't even sell them to people separately, like you're trying to cherry pick for the one you want to work right with your suppressor. Instead, one guy said he had to bully somebody to get the one he wanted. So it's this weird black market, gray market, underground market of how to get the right key. But this J. Bennett Design seemed to have solved that. And again, I haven't fully tested it, so I'm not going to recommend it yet in this video. At the point I recommend it, there will be a video on it. So if you're interested in watching this video, however long from now, look around in my videos, and if I recommend it, you'll see a video. Anyway, so continuing on the gas system, at the very least, there needs to be more settings from the factory. I mean, 2 just ain't cutting it. And it seems a little silly to me, because even at the time the Virtus was released, let alone the Spear LT, they knew people were running suppressors and gas management was a needed thing. And really at that time, the Virtus, the OSS/Huxworks types wouldn't have been as prolific then, so there'd be even greater need. Whereas now, really I recommend a flow-through can if you're getting this gun. That said, J. Bennett Designs and my experiment testing evaluation, that could change that opinion. But for right now, yeah, something like a Huxworks. I can't recommend CAT because I haven't used one. I'm really trying to get to where I don't recommend things I don't use or haven't used, especially extensively. So, yeah, that's it. Oh, sorry, that was a crazy rant on the gas system. I think there was a lot of important information there that you're a buyer, you're spending your hard-earned money on this, and marketing is really good, making this look really sexy, and you hear all kinds of crazy shit like piston guns run better suppressed. I'm just trying to educate you as a buyer, so please excuse some of these rants. And getting into magazine compatibility, I'm going to be honest, it's not great. At first, it seemed to be choking on GI mags, so I thought, okay, fair enough. We'll run PMags and Daniel Defense. Now, it didn't. I didn't see where it had a problem with any Daniel Defense magazines, which I think is funny, but it definitely choked on some PMags, and recently with this suppressor. So while, yeah, it had some issue with some GI mags and some double feeds while running the RC2, it kind of continued some of that behavior even with the new can, which has a very slight, if any, impact on the operation of the gun. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Maybe it's part of the Spear lineage, because I hear SR25 PMags don't run very well in the full-size Spear, so maybe, chip off the old block. But also checking over things, it was not the mags. I was able to verify that. So, I don't know. It's weird. A $2,000 gun, well, let's be real, it's like a $2,600 gun, probably MSRP. Probably find around $2,300. But anyway, a gun should not be doing that. I mean, you got PSA guns running PMags flawlessly. What? And I think this is great that my channel's small, so, you know, and I would go to great lengths to make sure I didn't, you know, I'd get a gun anonymously, but like, this gun ain't cherry picked. I can tell you that. Getting into reliability from that, yes, I had several stoppages, and that was really true. I should have emphasized it more on my Virtus videos, but weird enough that those things just didn't carry over, or did carry over to the Spear LT. I really thought I was going to have a more refined machine, and parts of it are more refined, but I think to a degree too, to make it look more refined, it lost some reliability. So accuracy, it was pretty good. I mean, I was getting decent groups. I think a good shooter with good ammo can get one MOA for sure. I mean, I was able to hit 6-inch gong, 300 meter target, no problem, with an EOTech and a magnifier. So, you know, any degradation wearing with that, it could easily be me just not being as good of a long distance shooter. So that's totally possible as well. As far as running suppressed, I kind of already talked about it. Use a can that has more flowing through it, so to speak. And if you do an RC2, it's not going to be terrible. You know, in humidity it's going to be worse than cold weather, and you know, your rate of fire is going to impact that greatly, and to a degree your rounds. So just kind of know what you're getting into. If you already have an RC2 and you don't want to buy another can, I totally understand that, and I think you'll be okay with it. Just kind of understand what you're looking at, and again, maybe give more thought to what kind of ammo you're putting through it. Maybe that'll help you out a little bit. And again, at the end of the day, see about the J. Bennett Designs gas key, gas valve, whatever. So fit and finish, not so good. It just where like some of these parts line up and stuff, and then, I mean, that's not great. It just doesn't lock together. It feels very mass-produced. In fact, I'll show you a example of how a rifle probably should be. So here is Daniel Defense M4A1. There is slight movement there. Meanwhile, the Spear LT, I bet you can see it or hear it. Yeah. And then we'll go back to Daniel Defense one more time. It's not even hardly picking up on my sound meter for my microphone. So, yeah, there you have it. By the way, obviously, the Daniel Defense M4A1 R3 is my next gun. So, let's get into another interesting topic that I kind of found. So, going back from this, right, sometimes you don't know what you have until you take it away, and then you find out it's a good thing or you find out it's a bad thing. The dimensions of this are kind of like funny, slightly different, like the ember block and even the width of the Picatinny rail. Now, it's not a bad thing. This is, again, just things I've noticed. The end of the upper rail to the charging handle is different. And then, of course, the pick guard is higher. And that's just because you have all this in here, so it's higher. I just thought you should note that. And then, like, putting my head down on the rifle is just different too. And so it's interesting. Again, none of it is necessarily good or bad. It's just all little dimensional things that I found different, that you may be interested in. And I put a lot of information in these videos. It's because I'm trying to help you make decisions when you're buying it. Maybe you don't care about anything of what I just said. Somebody might. And again, that's why I do the description where you can click through and kind of skip around my videos. So, next, and trust me, we're almost done here. So compatibility with other MCX generations, I kind of already covered that. And then of course the AR-15 in general. And then availability, right, when it comes to parts. It got decent with the Virtus, but now that it's been discontinued, good luck finding any parts. I've been trying to find a 675 barrel for 300 blackout, cannot find one. Yeah, so for the Spear, I have not seen one. It doesn't look like they offer as wide of an array of parts, and then two, it seems like they're harder to get. So a lot of things that brought me into the MCX arena, things I thought, you know, this will be great, this will be good, I really found out they didn't necessarily make it that much better, or they weren't worth the trade. So at the beginning of the video where I talked about, you know, what are you getting for the weight? Let's talk about that. The close. In the end, I found that I kept wondering why one would go with this gun. I mentioned in my initial impressions video that the DI-based AR platform has reached the end of its teething and the MCX still had, oh my, some room to improve. I find this is still the case with the MCX Spear LT. Also, the weight. There are no free lunches with anything. I hoped by trading less weight for more, I would get some things or at least something in return. After over 1,000 rounds, I can't figure out what I got in the trade. This gun weighs more than the Daniel Defense M4A1R3, and yet we're comparing the MCX with its 11.5-inch barrel to a gun that has a 14.5-inch barrel and still weighs about a half a pound less. Looking at the things I like, I can still get them from other guns. In the case of the Ambidextrous Controls, DD has them too. AR-15 compatibility. Well, AR-15s have those. The M4A1 included in that. Not to mention it runs without issue with nearly any magazine. That is the M4 I'm talking about. While the Spear LT's inability to do that is another loss. Foldability. For a 5.56 fighting rifle, in this role, I found I definitely don't need this feature. And even if I did, I can get a law folder. I do very much like how the upper receiver's rail extends over the front of the barrel as well as the ease of removing the handguard / rail and the barrel. However, for the purpose or role that I'm using this rifle to fill, neither is necessary or actually even used. Plus the RIS-3 rail, let alone an old RIS-2 on the DD, means the rail is damn near part of the upper anyway. Something I get from this is the R3 rail holds much better. So what do I get back for going up in weight? Nothing, other than having to worry about what mag I'm going to feed the gun. Therefore, I don't recommend the MCX Spear LT as a fighting rifle, especially in 5.56. Is it a cool range toy, something to impress your friends or show off on the gram? Sure, but after making this video, not to me. We will be getting rid of it and going back to our old friend, the Daniel Defense. However, instead of the Mark 18 this time, we will be going a little more sensible and even a little more updated with the Daniel Defense M4A1R3, RIS-3, whatever you want to call it. In time, you will see the initial impressions video of this gun as well, and kind of why we selected it, as well as, you know, our next step in it's our next stepping stone in our AR-15 journey. But I can tell you I already like it a lot. It feels about as heavy as that with nothing on that and all this stuff on here. So a couple notable things about the RIS-3 M4A1. 14.5 barrel, mid-length gas system, very smooth. I actually shot one of these before we switched to this. Trying out the 14.5, even though I'm really more of an 11.5 guy. Part of that even is just for rail space. So we're gonna see how this bad boy does. I like the Ambidextrous Controls. Admittedly, not as much as the Sig, but I do like them. So got running the Surefire on this, at least for now. So with that said, this has been James Donaldson with the Contemporary Gentleman. And until next time, keep your composure.